Hello everyone, this is Charles Laughlin and welcome to Above the Cloud. So this week I have as my guest my colleague Neil Polachek. We work together on the LSA's Tech Adoption Index program and we're old comrades from the Kelsey Group going way back. So Neil and I talk about a few things this week, things that are in the news related to the small business cloud and the small business shift to software as a service. And one of them was a recent study put out by Visa, talks about how small businesses are lagging consumer demand for e-commerce, and another study that talks about small businesses being started up by baby boomers who are eschewing retirement in favor of entrepreneurship. And we sort of unpack what implications that has for tech adoption. And then we kick around a couple news stories this week. One is the Grubhub Level Up acquisition and what that means for the future of Grubhub. I had to re-record this because the first time I said StubHub. I know the difference. It was a slip of the tongue. At any rate, and then the other one was eBay has started offering lending to small businesses through Square Capital. Kind of talk a little bit about this whole emerging disruption of small business lending from technology companies. So that's kind of the stuff we kick around. We kind of pack it all into about a 20-minute discussion. Quickly want to thank our sponsors, Mono Solutions and Boostability. Again, both of them have done great content in cooperation with LSA and Tech Adoption Index recently. There's the Mono Solutions Local Data Hub report. That if you haven't read it, please do. It's really interesting. And then also, Boostability recently did a webinar with us called Scoring the Digital Marketing Stack, and there's an upcoming white paper companion. Really interesting look at how agencies view components of the digital marketing stack. So, without further ado, let's go into the pod. Thanks. Hey, Neil.
Hi, Charles. How are you today?
I'm doing great, doing great. So we're going to talk about a few things we've seen in the news lately. Here we are. It's July 26th, so we're in the last week of July, middle of dog days
of summer.
Dog days. And so what's going on in the dog days? We're seeing a few things come out, a few studies come out that we've tie in a little bit with the themes that we talk about all the time at the Tech Adoption Index. So we thought we'd kick those around a little bit and then talk about some news. So this study came out, I think it was produced by Visa, if I'm not mistaken, SMBs in the digital era.
Well, yeah, they were the biggest sponsor of it.
Yeah, there's multi-sponsor.
Yeah, there were a bunch of people sponsoring it too, and it was pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah. So I wrote down a couple data points, and I think it noted that 38% of retail purchases are made online now. A substantial amount of retail purchases are e-commerce or some sort of hybrid of e-commerce and.
Well, and that data did point out that only 46% of SMBs that they surveyed, of course,
Right.
have an online presence, either a business website or online marketplace.
Right. So that's no that doesn't even indicate e-commerce capability. That's just an online presence, right? So
right. So there's, we've always I've kind of thought that the website business was finished, but in fact, there's still a lot of businesses that need a website. And
well, there's that, and then there's also the evolving sense of what is a website for.
Right.
Right. Which we did a whole paper on that recently.
Is it a data depository?
Right. The whole data hub idea.
Is it a data hub? Is it your point of presence out in the virtual world? It's a lot of those things.
Yeah. But this study, get back to this study, I think the key point they were making there is that it said 51% of consumers wish they could shop online exclusively. And I think, and then when you can sort of look at that data point and the growing amount of purchases that are occurring online, and then you look at where small businesses are with e-commerce, we have yet another example of that huge gap between consumer adoption, consumer preference, and SMB capability. It happens over and over again where consumers way ahead of the SMB.
20 years, right?
Yeah.
And the consumers always lead the businesses.
Mm-hmm.
I think the next piece of that will be service practitioners, service businesses needing to offer different means of payment rather than a check. I always use my friend Dan the dentist. He's sort of moved into the current modern generation by he texts me, appointment reminders and stuff. Mm-hmm. But he still ships me a bill.
Hmm.
at the end of the month, that it should say just tap here and pay,
How much
right?
dental work are you getting, Neil?
It's not every month; it's every 6 months. But
Okay,
the point
it's
is
like
that
a
these
monthly
service
dental bill.
providers
It's like you gotta, yeah.
are. I have good teeth.
Okay. Yeah.
My dad was an oral surgeon,
All right.
Charles.
Okay.
One reason why I'm always been so passionate about the small business market.
Right.
But I think these service providers, whether it's a roofer or a dentist or what have you, they're going to have to start offering on your phone payment methods, whether
Right.
it's Zelle or Venmo or what have you,
Hmm.
because next generation of modern consumers, they might not even have a checking account
Yeah.
or checks, right?
Right.
Just have an account.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
No, and no question. Messaging and mobile payments, all these things that, especially the old millennial versus the older consumer argument that there's a whole different way of doing business. Our SMB is going to catch up to it. But purely in e-commerce, there's this big lag between small businesses that have commerce capabilities and what consumers want. And I wonder, there are plenty of small businesses that do well with e-commerce, but there's so many that aren't. Can they catch up? Will they just be Amazoned out of business as a result of this gap, or is there an opportunity for someone to fill it?
I think maybe that remaining part of the market is just not going to do anything. They're just going to wait it out and hope they retire.
Which is interesting. That kind of leads to another topic. We were going to talk about Grubhub, but let's
Yeah, but let's go back for a
yeah.
second, because in that same Visa study,
Mm-hmm.
1 in 5 SMBs actually offered a loyalty program.
Uh-huh.
And yet, the reason I keep my American Express card is I get all those points and I buy stuff that, golf balls or,
Mm-hmm.
gift cards. Used Marriott gift card that I bought through American Express Rewards for a whole trip for about
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks. So these loyalty programs, I think, small businesses see them as much of a pain in the butt to manage
Mm-hmm.
as it is a good means keeping customers around. And I
Yeah.
think as platforms develop to make that simple, those will, maybe it'll go from 1 in 5 to 2 in 5 over time.
Yeah, I don't think it'll ever be 5 and 5 because I think there's
No,
certain businesses that just don't lend themselves to loyalty
no,
programs.
no.
The classic roofer example. You
Yeah, I
sell
mean,
one roof to one
if I,
person.
if I
You're not
have to
going to buy
call
another
him
roof
once
from you.
every 20 years, I actually will not be too loyal to him.
Yeah, probably not. This kind of makes a nice segue into this conversation about boomer businesses because we saw this other
Uh-huh.
study. There's this other study. It was published in Forbes, and I think it was produced. Again, we're talking about all these corporate sponsored studies, but there's still interesting data in them. It's not like they're unvalid. But it was from a financial company talking to SMBs over 50, which they call boomers. Technically, they're not all boomers. It starts about 54, I believe.
Right.
But close enough, I guess. And they talk about entrepreneurs in that sort of 50 plus age cohort, and they're making the point. I'm not sure the data supported it that strongly, or maybe it just wasn't in the summary I read. But they made the assertion that increasingly baby boomers, instead of looking at retirement, they're looking at transitioning into business ownership, whether it's starting a restaurant or doing a consulting business or whatever it is. And what I thought it was interesting, which with the conversation, I thought this might trigger is the data we gather through the Tech Adoption Index says that there's this huge gap between tech adoption between, say, loosely millennial business owners and baby boom business owners. But what I think this study is saying is the small business boomers are starting new businesses, and what we were looking at is sort of businesses that have been around a long time.
Right. Totally agree. I think these are new entrants essentially.
Yes. Yes.
They've exited. I have this story about a friend of mine. Her husband left a big, national company.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably between 45 and 55.
Mm-hmm.
He's looking at actually moving his family to Lake Tahoe, California.
Mm-hmm.
I saw them last week, and he's looking at buying a carpet restoration business or a carpet cleaning business, or true down home local
Right.
service provider. The one he's looking at been in business 40 plus years. Same people have run it. They run it by paper and pen.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to come in. He wants to keep it that name. He wants to say they've been in business 40 years.
Right.
But he's going to throw a bunch of technology into that thing because he doesn't want to be, chasing around and answering his phone. He wants to do it. He wants to run it off his phone.
Right.
So it's sort of the notion of maybe existing baby boomer does not adopt technology for their existing business.
That they've run for 30 years.
That's right. But baby boomer-ish, age 45, 55, comes into the market to buy established business by baby boomer and then
Right.
applies
So is
technology.
that owner going to really be any different from the millennial?
I don't think so.
So
Because
that's
that
my
guy's
theory
coming
too.
out of a big company that's seen all this technology
Right.
stuff, right?
Right.
And they're
These are going to be people like either downsized out of a corporate job or taking an early
lifestyle.
buyout or have
Yeah,
decided to leave the corporate world for a
that's
lifestyle
right.
change. So they're coming, they may be 50 years old or 55 years old or whatever, which, sorry, but I don't
Not
consider
that
that old.
old. In fact, that's really young.
Yes, exactly. Funny that young is a moving target, but nonetheless, it's sort of silly to think of someone in that age group as technologically, backward. I mean, that's the smartphone usage is sort of indiscernible at that age group from younger people. I mean, there's some differences in there may be less less fluency in digital culture, but there's certainly a appreciation for using technology to run businesses more efficiently, I think. So I'd be interested for it to measure
So,
whether
so
that,
let's take this
yeah,
to the logical extension,
yeah,
right? So we know that the up and coming businesses are applying technology. We
hmm,
know that. The
yes,
ones that started 3, 5, 10 years ago.
absolutely. That's it's clear as mud, clear as day in the data. Yeah,
We know that the 55 plus are probably not going to bother with a whole lot of technology. They're going to exit their business
right.
or
They don't want
sell.
to invest in it, or they don't want to hassle with it. Yeah,
But the people who are going to come in to run those businesses are probably going to be more experienced than a 30-year-old.
hmm,
They Because you need some capital, right, to
right,
buy some of these existing businesses. And as that article talked about, people are tapping into their 401ks
hmm,
as maybe down payment or capital contribution into buying this thing. So we're going to see this group of people who have been in the corporate sector exit the corporate sector for lifestyle or because they're going to get squeezed out because of numbers games
hmm,
and enter the small business marketplace. But they're more advanced and further along in their lives and in their career. And so maybe we're going to see this sort of acceleration of the adoption of
right,
technology as those people exit the corporate world and enter the small business, local, whatever we want to call it, world, with the intent of applying technology to a business that they
right,
bought with their 401k money.
right. Which kind of
Is
goes
that
back to the age of business probably being the best indicator. But then again, age of business could be deceiving because you might be buying an existing business and
That's right.
yeah.
That's right.
So
So it's
yeah,
sort of it's the persona of that business owner that's going to define this stuff.
right, right. So it gives us a
And
lot to think about in terms of how we measure
that's
this.
right. And how we explain to, the listeners, clients of TAI to think
Hmm.
about how they go to market.
Right,
Because that friend of mine who's going to buy that carpet restoration business in Lake Tahoe is going to be an ideal target
yep,
for all this technology. Ideal target.
absolutely. So let's shift gears a little bit. I think one of the bigger pieces of real actual news, other than these studies we've been kicking around, is the Grubhub Level Up acquisition, 390 million cash purchase of Level Up.
Cash is pretty neat for a
Yeah.
startup.
So what's interesting about this is, Grubhub, they've made a bunch of it. They've been very acquisitive company. I think it was E24 they acquired, and then they bought Groupon's order up
Yeah.
functionality. So they've been buying like ordering platforms to kind of, get rid of competitors and scale up the ordering side of the business. The Level Up is different though. That gets them moving more towards like being an OS for restaurants. Is that
Get some deeper in.
yeah. Wondering if this acquisition moves Grubhub more into upserve territory.
Oh, I think it does. I mean,
Yeah.
like in the release, it said, that it allows Grubhub to deepen its integration with restaurants' point of sale
Yep.
systems, allow them to handle more deliveries, manage their customers. I mean,
Hmm.
so they're getting deeper in, and I think Grubhub saw that like we've been talking about for a long time, the more hooks
Yeah.
these businesses have into their SMB customers, the less likely they are to see churn,
Yeah.
which is the big bugaboo in the entire SMB SaaS world is churn.
Right. Right. So who's threatened by this most? I think I
I think
suppose Observe. I suppose well, OpenTable I think has been on everyone's target list for a long
I
time.
would think OpenTable, sure.
Mm.
I would think any of the pre-existing ordering platforms and or point of sale platforms for restaurants.
Mhm.
So I mean, you go online, you can see a ton of point of sale solutions for restaurants.
Right.
I think Grubhub's doing a smart play here by buying off another piece of the value proposition,
Right.
value equation.
Yep. And yet another example of, as we were saying, no one's staying still in,
No.
in just being one thing for, even if it's for a vertical segment, you have to be many things.
You do.
Yeah.
You
Which
do.
gets us into another interesting piece of news, which is eBay offering lending through
Lending
Square.
through their old owner's arch enemy, Square.
Right. Yeah. Formerly owned by PayPal, and PayPal and Square are certainly arch enemies now. Sort of the SMB SMB financing is becoming a real battleground, and it's certainly. I wonder. So now we have what Square offering financing. Obviously, there's existing sort of startups like Cabbage and others.
Right. Well, eBay's offering
Yeah.
Square's financing,
Right.
up
Right.
to $100,000. I mean, you got to believe that banks,
Yeah. I'm wondering where the banks come in on this because, well, the banks have been ignoring the small business segment
right? Are they just
for
sitting
years.
around waiting for all this stuff to disrupt them?
Well, I think they seeded this market in a lot of ways to startups who can come in and find a way to do proper credit analysis and do small amount lending that and make money off of it. Whereas the big banks have generally not been that interested in this market.
Well, and the big banks have huge operating costs. They have
Hmm.
huge process. They have, methods and practices that probably don't make it easy for them to really participate in that SMB market. You get these new entrants come in, they shave basis points off the transaction fees,
Hmm.
and the merchant goes, I'll try that.
Right. And also, I think our friend Mark McLeod from SherPath made this point. A lot of these companies are sitting on the the revenue streams of those small businesses. So they have the data to make really pretty precise credit assessments.
Well, think about that for a minute, because
Yeah.
if they're watching the revenue stream,
Hmm.
right, and they see that this business's revenues are declining a bit,
Hmm.
it could give them insight into two things. One is they got to watch the creditworthiness of that business.
Hmm.
But I think more importantly, that might say, maybe I need to get this guy some more leads. Maybe he
Right.
needs some more business. Maybe I partner with somebody who can help drive their business on the revenue side back up again,
Hmm.
right? This was always my belief about what Henry Schein knew about dentist offices,
Right.
because they saw the volume of products flowing through to the dentist.
Hmm.
And let's say the dentist, is buying 50 of these widgets every month, and all of a sudden it drops to 30 or 25. They haven't moved to another provider. That might be a signal that that business's patient volume is slowing.
I would imagine the amount of gauze they're using tells you
Right. That's
how many
right.
teeth they're pulling, and
So let me help. It should signal to somebody like Henry Schein. Oh, let us help you get some more patients in the door.
Hmm.
And I just think
That was their missed opportunity. Yeah.
yeah, I think we're a little ways away from people going, oh, that's a good idea. I could actually get a partner. I could do it myself.
Hmm.
Now I think with Stu McFarlane over at Internet Brands, sort
Hmm.
of running the demand force / Henry Schein, I think they call it Shine One or Henry Schein One platform. I think they're going to start to really use the signals
Right.
that they can extract from these other aspects of a business to drive more leads to them or figure out how else they can help them.
Yeah. Which touches on another thesis we've always had, which is that there's so many different doorways into ownership of that customer, that if they start doing that service, then that's I suppose maybe they're partnering with somebody who is a lead generation business, but that lead gen business is not the one with the valued relationship. It's
No, what's valued is if I know that based on your records, either your orders or your cash flow line or your whatever,
mm-hmm.
and I see that you're declining, I can pump more leads to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's beneficial to you and it's beneficial to me as that provider. And now I'm sort of the middleman between the leads provider and that customer.
Right.
So the leads guy is gonna, if I build a big enough base of customers that I can do that with, the leads guys will have some real challenges.
All right, well, let's leave it there, but I want to make a couple of quick announcements, bring up a couple of things for our listeners to be aware of. We have our Tech Adoption Summit coming up November 7th in San Francisco. We're going to be back at the Laundry, kind of a funky, cool little space in the Mission, which is an awesome neighborhood. And we've got a couple great speakers already lined up. We've got Talithia Kornweibel from Gusto, the marketing director of marketing for Gusto. She's got a great background. Was at Esurance for a long time.
Yeah.
Really steeped in customer experience. That's her.
Well, as I've told you before, that's what they're totally focused on is customer experience. And so I think she'll be a fantastic keynote.
Right. And then we've got Jackie Cook from Vendasta. They've got some really good data on what drives churn that they're going to talk about. We got Mark Cannon from Boom Time, who's one of the, I don't know, you and I know him really well, one of the just crazy
mad scientist.
Mad scientist, absolutely.
Of local.
And we're going to have a conversation with him about his new passion, which is this notion of account-based selling, which is really, a lot of people would make the case that is how B2B sales is going to be. Especially, going forward, that's going to be a fascinating conversation. Still, we're plenty of others we're going to be announcing soon. So watch the Tech Adoption Index website or the LSA.org website for agenda. You can register now. Early bird rates are available. And if you're interested in participating in the show in any way, my email address is charles@thelsa.org. Just reach out and let's talk. Anything else you want to add, Neil?
No, I think we're in one of those summer quiet periods a little bit. There's some news, but I think we'll see a lot of stuff ramp up come the fall.
Yep.
I think November 7th is a great time to figure out what all is going on in this space and what 2019. I can't believe we're already talking about.
Yeah.
Will look like.
And we will have fresh data from the Tech Adoption Index. We'll be running the next wave in the next few weeks. And so we'll have some fresh data to share with you and really hope to see you there. So that's that. And thanks for joining us today. Neil, thank you.
Thanks, Charles. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.